Assuming those stories are true, I don't know if they are. If it is true, why would God only choose some people to say this to?
You get your subconscious, you'll have thoughts pop into your head. Sometimes they pop into your entire body, your muscles, everything feels that subconscious message.
I got a question for you. Why does God make himself known only to some people?
That's a great question. There's a whole philosophical subject called divine hiddenness, which philosophers debate. And there's various reasons. For one thing, a lot of the position of theologians is that, well, let me just quote C.S. Lewis. He says, honest rejection of Christ, however wrong, shall be forgiven and healed. So one of the things he's saying, like, listen, if you are truly a non-resistant non-believer, you're not going to be condemned necessarily because of that. You may have a good excuse. But the argument would be is that maybe God is making himself known to people throughout their lives in various ways. Maybe there is no such thing as non-resistant non-believers. There's a whole philosophical field discussing that.
I know a guy. It's a story I tell quite a bit. I'll keep it simple. He was a urban city atheist, hanging out, punk rock, cared for nothing, getting drunk. And he was out in the woods one day with a bunch of friends, woke up hungover, went to take a leak when he said that he felt a powerful booming voice emerging from within his own body. And it was God saying, why are you doing this? And he had a panic attack, started freaking out, looking around like, how am I hearing this voice? And he stuttered and stammered it, asked him again, why are you doing this? And he said, I don't know. And it told him, you have to fix your life. And right at that moment, he freaked out. He said that he began reading and trying to find answers because he didn't know what happened. And ultimately, it led him to the church where he cleaned up his life, stopped drinking, opened a coffee shop, and now he's just a regular working class guy. And he says, I understand that you'll never believe me that this happened, but it happened to me, and that's all that matters because I believe it. And so I don't think the guy's crazy. Maybe he was just crazy, I guess.
No.
But there's a lot of stories like that. A lot of stories of people saying they felt a shaking voice come from within their body. And that's why I ask, assuming those stories are true, I don't know if they are. If it is true, why would God only choose some people to say this to?
You get your subconscious, you'll have thoughts pop into your head. Sometimes they pop into your entire body, your muscles, everything feels that subconscious message. And then that'll be a booming sound or something, a vision. You'll actually experience the image.
One thing we have to take into effect is God's omniscience. Maybe he knows for that guy, he needs to do this and it will help save him. Maybe for some people, if he did that, they'd become a fundamentalist preacher and they'd start attacking abortion clinics, for example, this kind of stuff.
Are you hearing a voice?
Yes, I call it the moment.
So, I mean, like, maybe God can see all these possible timelines and he knows, I'll do this here, I'll do that there, and that will help. Maybe for some people, he can see in all possible future timelines and go, it doesn't matter if I did that, it would never help. It would just make them worse, depending on their psychology. So God, we have to take into a factor when we look at divine hiddenness, the omniscience of God and what he could know. Given, this is something philosophers talk about, given his vast knowledge, we can't say that he is not wrong for not doing that for every person, given that kind of knowledge.
In the Bible, he's not even omniscient. Like in Genesis 18, he doesn't know what's happening in Sodom. In Genesis 22, he doesn't know if Abraham's going to actually fulfill the test that he's been given to sacrifice Isaac. In Deuteronomy 13, he specifically says he's testing the Israelites to know if they will be faithful to him. Over and over again, God just admits that he's not omniscient.
If I catch my daughter catching a cookie and I go, what are you doing? Does that mean I don't know what I just saw? Or am I trying to have a relationship with her and getting her to confess?
He said, now I know in Genesis 22, meaning he didn't know prior. The Hebrew word atah means now. In this moment, I know.
Yeah, we can just look at that through speech act theory. And God is, when he's communicating and talking with people.
Right, words don't mean words, I'm sure.
Well, no, they don't. That's what speech act theory is about. If I said to you, you're standing on my foot, I'm not just saying, hey, look at that. I'm actually asking you to get off my foot. We often communicate in ways that are not literal. This is the difference between locution and illocution.
Or actually, interesting point you brought up with you're standing on my foot. He's on the other side of the room. But he could be, we often say, I don't want to step on anyone's toes here.
Yeah, there you go.
Sure, but that's an idiom. We know what idioms are.
And God can use idioms too to communicate.
Now I know is not an idiom.
It can definitely be.
This is a statement of fact.
I do think that these ancient gods from the ancient text, were actually human men.
Yeah.
And they rolled into town. They're like, they killed the old guy who called himself God. And we're like, I'm God now. And that's why you get this schizophrenic God and all these different stories, different personalities. And then at some point, people tapped into the divine reality and they're like, oh, it can speak to you as well. But the guys that would commandeer the title get written into the story.
Not as God, though. These people often have names, and they're typically referred to as prophets. So certainly if you want to argue that people were false prophets, I'd agree with you. But the idea that someone heard a loud crackling voice or something from a burning bush is your better argument is that it's allegory and not some guy hiding behind the rock shouting.
Moses, I think he was tripping
Esther
on
Hamori
that
wrote about
acacia
this.
bush.
Esther Hamori's a professor. She wrote a book called When Gods Were Men. And if you read the ancient Babylonian and Akkadian literature, the gods are almost universally described as being man-like, which is why we find in the Bible that mankind is created in the image of God, which is identical to what it says about the children of Adam. Adam's children were made in the image of Adam. Mankind and gods were more similar in ancient times than we like to believe. This idea that God is transcendent, omniscient, and is pervading all things is a Greco-Roman idea.
Aliens.
It's definitely aliens. It's definitely the aliens. They built the pyramids.
But they're inside you.
If the argument is that they were people who are man-like and we were made in their image, that is why you get ancient alien theorists.
You're not
They're
wrong.
Like, if there were gods, why would they be perceived as gods? They had the capabilities that man could not understand or comprehend. They were floating around and flying through the air. Or you think about like a gun. Imagine having like a Derringer, and you go to an ancient civilization and you point at someone and then there's a thunder crack and the person just drops dead. They're like, he pointed at him, thunder cracked in the sky, and he was dead.
That was Zeus, dude. They were like, he can throw lightning. You're like, dude, he had an electrical spark.
No, he had a gun.
Yeah, he had something that could do electrical sparks.
He struck him with lightning. No, he went bang.
Literally, he could throw lightning in the story. I mean, he had electricity, obviously. These ancient texts, someone comes in on a hot air balloon or a hang glider, you're going to be like, they have wings. And if they land and they're like, I'm a god, you're going to be like, I believe you.
They're like superhumans.
Or it was just stories they told with thunder. Like nobody, Lord help us if in the future they're like, did you know they worshipped a god who was half man, half spider? And he could climb walls and he fought crime. And we'd be like, wow.
I mean, the important point is that all of that could be true. We could all just pretend we're atheists here for the sake of the argument. That doesn't change the fact that the Judeo-Christian tradition has given us most of the things that we hold sacred today.
I am a big proponent of whatever made you famous today. You don't have to keep doing that now in the future. Like Christianity got us to this point. We don't need to keep focusing on 2,000 years ago when we can build something new.
But the problem is we're trying, and again, collapsing birth rates, more authoritarianism, higher levels of depression, lower volunteering and charity work. The attempt to build something, as you were talking about the cut stem thing, cutting the flower off, the flower's dying before our eyes. So this idea that we can just keep having the nice stuff we like in the West without the Christian foundations showing before our eyes in real time is not working.
Why is giving to charity such an important thing? Because as it turns out, secular charities are actually quite popular. They're just a little bit below non-secular charities, but I'm trying to figure out why that's the measuring point we need to be aiming at.
I think all the charities are fake, by the way.
Well, it's
Yeah,
funny you bring that
I'm
up,
trying to
'cause
figure out why half these charities we wouldn't need if we had a better government system.
in government
I
doesn't.
completely disagree.
Yeah, government's horrible at providing for
What I'm
people.
suggesting is that if we had proper structures in the United States on both the federal and the state and the local level that helped people to actually survive, we wouldn't need to be giving handouts to people.
That's impossible.
Well, when future humans of the gaps argument, it actually works, then we can have a discussion. But right now, it isn't.
Well, the issue with government is that it is quite literally impossible for a single entity to take care of literally everybody because of conflicting.
No, I'm not saying the government has to take care of you. What I'm saying is that in a thriving society, charity becomes less important because you have less people that need the charity. So I'm trying to figure out, I'd rather prevent the need for charity
I disagree.
than to say that charitable giving is the goal.
I disagree. That's less important. I mean, that seems to be more of a predictive. More opinion. If you go back 200 years, nobody would need nobody talked about having therapists, or maybe not 200 years, but a couple hundred years. Like, there's no therapists. You don't need organizations to provide mental health care for medieval warriors who fought. They came back and they were just, damaged. And so we've actually increased charities and increased the perception of the need for them over time with prosperity and technology.
No, I'm not saying we don't need them. What I'm saying is I'd rather attack the root causes that the charities are giving to.
That's what I think is the answer.
My point
is
is
the
there
root
will
cause
always
issues.
be some perceived reason to provide some kind of charity to somebody else.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah. So it's never going to go away. It's only ever going to expand. And government can't address these things.
You were saying like that the cut stem, the cut flower is like the Christian framework that if it's gone and it's like it's dying off the stem.
The roots of the flower are the Christian moral tradition, and the flower is America.
The reason I think
West.
that like birth rates are declining is PFAS, these chemicals in the foods, in the groundwater, the pharmaceuticals, the azo dyes, all this crazy toxin is made people mute. Their minds are like, Where's the love?
Maybe, but the actual data correlation we have is that young people are no longer going into public spaces, largely due to the internet. So one of the reasons why, and this is why I think religion plays a role in this. For your typical urban liberal, they may actually be from a Christian family or whatever, but they're lapsed. They don't go to church. They don't do any of these things. Young men aren't going outside anymore. Virginity among men under the age of 30 has skyrocketed some like 20 or 30%. Even among women, it's going up. Now, Seamus hilariously said, based. And I said, no, Seamus, 20-year-old men, by your standard, should be married with children. And he was like, oh, yeah. Like, so it is not good that young men are not having families. However, there is a moral tradition aligned with Christianity, largely Catholicism, as you pointed out, where they have a duty not just to themselves, but to a shared God they both see, to have family. So they are actually getting married and having kids, whereas the kid who grows up in the city is sitting around playing, scrolling TikTok all day and not going outside. That's why fertility rate is declining.
Can we, like, is it like, I'm
Not the
thinking
only reason.
People that adhere to a cult, and it's a neutral term, cult. Every religion's a cult. Every, group, think, whatever. Bunch of followers. Now, no offense, everyone's a leader and a follower in their own way, but to choose to follow a group of ideas, a group think. Do we need followers to thrive in a society? Do we need like a
yes.
0.0001% of the society are the leaders, and then everyone else needs to be a follower
yes.
that doesn't think too critically?
Yes. And the problem is, I think in America, there is this perception that being a follower is a bad thing, and it's offensive to call someone a follower, and everyone has to be a leader. When everyone's a leader, everybody's running around in random directions. The example I like to give to people is imagine the king standing on the front line of his army, about to engage in a battle to save their homeland. Each and every one of those men standing shoulder to shoulder with their spears or swords or whatever is a follower of the king. But they are also the most noble, willing to sacrifice themselves for something they care about and believe in to preserve a community. The king as the leader stands in front of them. I don't respect modern leaders who hide behind walls and cower in their bunkers and basements. But the traditional value of what it means to be a leader is you were leading the charge. You told everybody I would never command you to do that which I would not do myself. The king would jump on his horse and scream charge and run forward with his followers behind him. That king had no power were it not for his followers who believed in him and were willing to sacrifice everything for something they believed in. That's what it truly means to have a good leader and good followers. And it's entirely respectable, in my view, that there are people who simply want to be followers. It's entirely respectable there are people who want to be leaders. It is not respectable that everybody thinks they're the main character. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're never going to be the president. You're never going to be a billionaire. Your purpose is where you are, and sometimes that's okay. Sometimes you should strive for more. Sometimes you should recognize you should stop striving for more and just be what you're best at.
This is what I call a product of Disney culture. We all need to be special, someone who has a romantic or venture somewhere out there, and everyone's trying to be that main character, as you mentioned right now. It just doesn't work. It just seems like it's a result. It could be a result of like Nietzschean Ubermensch thinking. We all need to be this Superman kind of person.
We are all the main character of our own story. Like we're all seeing it first person.
Yeah.
So, and that is an empowering realization, is that you are the main creator of your reality. Like stuff is happening around you. You are in control of this business.
But not
to what point though? Because you need people to kind of calm down this. What do you call it? I guess aggression or this.
But think about what you're saying there. Yeah, that is an issue. But look at what happens in Christianity. You say, God, you come into my heart. You become the main character, and I follow you. And Christ says, they hated me, they're going to hate you. They're going to persecute you for my sake. You're not going to be above your master. You're going to go through hardship like I'm going to go through hardship for you. So you're talking about this idea of a leader the king who goes out and leads his army. We see in Christianity that mentality. Jesus goes to the cross for us. He suffers for us. Therefore, we can go out and suffer and do good work. So Christianity has that built-in mechanism in there that's going to allow people to say, yes, I will go and suffer for the king.
Yes, it has a built-in mechanism for people to be followers, which does concern me if it just disappears for a moment. Hitler, Trump, random demagogue appears, and Trump's a great guy. I love him, but powerful speaker. People will be like, I need to follow something more came along that I can follow now. And you're like, whoa, bro, are you addicted to following?
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement with Tim here. I don't think being a follower is a bad thing. I think there's a huge segment of the population that don't feel comfortable being leaders. They feel comfortable as being followers. I think the problem is sometimes they don't know how to choose what to follow, and they can fall prey to following something that's actually dangerous for them. And we've seen that all throughout history in every country.
Which is Ian's point. Nazism. which I agree.
Right.
Sometimes there are evil people that amass dangerous amounts of power.
Can you make a religion that creates leaders?
Not everybody should be a leader. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like a buddy of mine told me a long time ago, he didn't aspire to perceived greatness. He's like, I'm just happy working my 9 to 5. Why? Because I do my thing, I mind my own business, and my mind is free. While I'm doing this menial task and this menial job where someone else is stressed, he's like, I have my hours where I have to work. While I'm working, I'm thinking about what I want to do after work. I'm thinking about what I want to do with my family. And then once I'm done with work, me and my family go out to dinner and we have a good time. We smile and laugh. My boss, he's doing paperwork all night. He's like, that's for him. He wants to do that. More power to him. It's not for me. And I was like, it's actually, kind of informed my view on these things. Some people just say, hey, man, you want to work 16-hour days, 24/7 and run a business and make the money? Tell me what you need me to do and I'll do what I can. I'm going to spend time with my family for the most part.
So what do we need? We need some more leaders, because I think they said the middle class there's been a disparity between the wealth. A lot of poor, a lot of rich now, less middle class. Maybe if we make more leaders, but not too many more, maybe like 7% more leaders in society, we'll create a middle class of business owners, people that are willing to like.
I think we
used to
need
have
incentivification. It's very difficult for people to want to be leaders. Some of them have the capacity, but they don't have the means. Like there's so many people that could actually be leading something, but they don't have, like they can't leave their 9 to 5, or they've got family members they have to tend to, and it's very difficult for them to get training. So, for example, I went to seminary. I got an actual seminary education. The number of pastors that I've worked with when I was a Christian that couldn't afford to leave their actual work and family life to go get that education is very high. There's a high percentage of pastors with no education, not because they don't want it, but because they can't afford to leave what they're doing and actually go get it. And that's the hardest part in society is when you want to be a leader, it takes education and takes commitment, and it's hard to put down your other commitments to go do that thing. But I don't know how we incentivize it other than like scholarships, tax breaks, things like that.
Yeah, it's like kind of crossing a class system.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, the good thing is a lot of charities have been trying to help out with that. And that's another good thing we see in society is the fact that charity work is, pushing these ideas like we'll give you money to go do this kind of thing, or we'll help you out with that. So those are always very important, and we need those in society.
Looking at the World Population Review.com, it's the happiness index. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I necessarily see any correlation between happiness in a nation other than wealth.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the leading predictor.
Right, probably makes sense. And I think they actually say that it's gross domestic product and social support, life expectancy, and freedom to make your own life choices is towards the bottom of the list. Generosity is at the bottom of the list. It really just is, can I afford food and shelter for my family? Mm-hmm. And then I'm good. And then I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch TV and not got to worry about anything else.
Can you expect to be healthy? Can you get your needs met? Mm-hmm. Those are the things that really make people happy. And do you have social connections that bring meaning to your life?
Yeah.
And North Korea is considered to be very happy.
Oh yeah, they're so trustworthy over there.
North Korea is unrated.
Well, the thing of it is, there are some countries where if they're given a questionnaire, they only have the option to answer one way.
Right.
That's the case.
Well, even like sometimes people just say they're happy. I mean, I've known people who have committed suicide, and I asked, "Are you doing okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm doing fine. I'll be all right." And then a week later, they're gone.
But that's the thing about depression that people need to understand. It's not always. People assume depression is like you're in debilitating pain, but depression for a lot of people and a lot of the time is literally just boredom.
Yeah,
it's people who say like, if I wake up, what am I doing? They have no
like
purpose.
A lack of fulfillment. It's different than unhappiness.
It is
sadness. It's like, what's the point anyway? I don't really need to be here anymore. I figured it out, or I got it.
You don't feel like. People will say the things that I used to enjoy doing, I don't enjoy doing anymore. They're not sad. They're not angry. They're not crying. They're just like, I don't know, riding my bike seems boring. I just don't want to do it. And they end up doing nothing. And this is a big sign of depression. That's why they always say check on your friends. Because if they're not coming to hang out, you might text them and they'll be like, no, I'm cool. I'm chilling watching TV. They might be depressed. They're not working towards anything, not doing anything. I do think, obviously, though, it doesn't matter which religion, but people who have a religion, particularly Abrahamic, are less likely. I don't know if it's true, but they fear. You can't kill yourself. You'll be tortured for all eternity. It's a moral sin.
And it's like weekly they're reminded that. I mean, getting out of the house and going somewhere every week is a big shakeup. Whether it's for church or a job. Like this show is kind of like my church. I mean, I get out of the house, I sit at home. I work from home. I spend so much time at home.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.